I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning for the Life in UK test, part 159, Problems in the Economy in the 1970s, part 2, while doing short impingement training. And if you participate in the short impingement training, that is at your own risk. So I already had that in the late 1970s, the economical boom after the war had gone down, and that the prices of goods and raw materials began to rise sharply, so things were getting more expensive, and that the exchange rate between pounds and other currencies was unstable. So far we are understanding it. That means you could not say it will cost that and that much to buy from the United States a good or a raw material, because today the pound is higher and tomorrow lower and we don't know how it goes. Now the next sentence is a bit hard to understand. This caused problems with the balance of payments. Imports of goods were valued at more than the price paid for exports. So if the United Kingdom was buying from the United States for £1 million steel, when someone could have said that steel bought from the United States has greater value, and we're getting for 1 million just 900 kilogram. And if the United Kingdom when sells steel to the United States, the pound was unstable and was going up and down, and now it was tried to sell 1 ton of steel, and the United States in dollars were giving only 900,000, 800,000, because the pound was unstable. For these things, it is not enough to have a feeling for these numbers. It's not enough to think the pound is unstable and so it has an impact on the trading, so the imports are higher, lower, I guess in the middle, but it's unstable. That is not enough. For these mathematical things, it has to be known exactly what means what. So let's go to something we know exactly. Radar was first successful tested in 1935. Maybe that will help us to know that we know it was 1935. It is very important for the history. That means 4 years, I said it a couple of times in the first part, it was 4 years before the start of the Second World War. It is very important. The Germans also then had radar and so on, but that Britain had it in 1935 and that it was invented in Britain, that Britain had it first, better and faster new models and so on. It is very important when what happened. But is it important for us? Tomorrow, when we are buying goods in a supermarket? And the next thing is, would it not be more useful to learn the dates when it was broadly used? Some things are invented decades before they come in use. Is it not more important to know when televisions were used by the broad amount of public? About cars, we know that it was at some time invented. They did not tell us when. It was in the 1880s or something. But it's more important that we know that in the 1920s, the amount of people, in the 1930s, the amount of people possessing a car reduced by 1 million to 2 million. But that still means that in 1940, over 90% did not have a car of the population. That means to learn, the car was invented, let's say, in 1872. Or let's say 1882. That number is useless. We have to know, yes, but in Britain the people started to drive a car in the 1930s. But even 1939, just 2 million cars, 2 million people had a car. Maybe it would have been important to know, and in the 1940s there were so many, in the 1950s so many, because here was written, in the swinging 60s people were able to buy cars. That means the car was invented somewhere in the 1880s. In the 1930s, many more people bought cars, but it was still just 2 million. And only in the swinging 60s, people were able to buy cars. So it is important for our life maybe, if one number is important, to know when the people started to use cars. And that is not in the 1930s or 1880s, that is in the 1960s. So the television was developed in the 1920s. The first broadcast was made in 1932 in the 30s. The first broadcast system started in 1936. That is already in the second half of the 1930s. When did the most people have a television? Was it in the 40s, 50s? I think it was sometime in the 50s. That would be an important number for us. When people actually used it and not when it was invented. We should learn when they were invented. It was developed in the 1920s, and the first broadcast in 1932 of a television, and the BBC started the first broadcast in 1936. The radar was developed, and the television was developed by John Logie Baird. The radar was developed by Sir Robert Watson Watt. And that was the first successful test. Now, when was it invented now? I actually don't know it. If an invention is possible to register before it was successfully tested. I think yes. The first successful test was 1935. Of a radar. By Sir Robert Watson Watt. Now we're doing the full short impingement training, and then we're going back to Sir Robert Watson Watt, who firstly successfully tested in 1935 the radar, and Sir John Logie Baird, who in the 1920s developed the television and made the first broadcast from London to Glasgow in 1932, and the BBC started to make the first broadcast in 1936. Now we will talk also about inflation, the economy, and all the things which are important tomorrow when we buy and return stuff. So what are we doing? We're doing short impingement training. If you participate in it, then it is at your own risk. And we're going back with shoulders, we're going up in front and down. And we're doing a few more of them. And the last one. And now we're doing backward shoulder circles. And the last one. And now we're lifting the arms up, and we're just concentrating on the scapulars. How are we opening up and making room for the humerus? And again down. And if the exercise hurts, then don't do it, or any other exercise if it hurts, don't do it. Bring the arms up and just concentrate on the scapulars. How are we opening up? And again down. And we're opening up. We're lifting the arms up and opening the scapulars. And now the arms to the side. And we're just observing what are the scapulars doing. Are we now going around the ribcage, back and back together, the scapulars. Now the scapulars should follow the humerus around the ribcage to the sides. And now again back together with the scapulars. And again over the ribcage, following the humerus to the sides. And again back together with the scapulars. Always giving a perfect socket for the humerus. Around the ribcage, following the humerus, now again back together. And the last time, the scapulars following the humerus around the ribcage to the sides of the ribcage. And back, scapulars back together. Now we're having the legs sitting wide apart. We're going into the knees, we're hinging forward with a straight back. We're letting the arms hang. And now we're pinching the scapulars together. And we're doing that with effortless muscle exercise. Now make fists. And bring the arms up. And press still the scapulars together. And release the arms. And the scapulars. And the second round. Pinch the scapulars together and do it with hand. Now make fists. And lift the arms up. And pinch the scapulars together. Release the arms and the scapulars. And now the next exercise, the two-shielded turtle training shell. We're going into the knees, ranging forward, making a round back, letting the arms hang, turning the arms to the inside, and releasing the arms high up and together. And bringing the arms down. The arms are down. We're bringing the scapulars down and the scapulars together. So the arms high up and together with the arms, and the scapulars back, down, together, and lift with effort. the arms high up, together, skip this down. A little longer, and release. And the second round into the knees, hinge forward, round back, the arms hanging, and returning the arms to the inside. And now we bring the arms high up and together. We are straightening slowly up. We're bringing the scapulas down, together. The arms high up, together, scapulas down, together. And longer with it. And release. And the last exercise, a shrug, lifting the arms up. And we're shrugging the shoulders up. And we're letting the arms down. And now we're bringing the arms up. And we're shrugging the shoulders up. And releasing it all down again. And we're lifting the arms up. And we're lifting the shoulders up. And we're letting it all down again. Now just stretching the arm in front, shoulder stays back, shoulders down. We're relaxing the arm and we're pulling the arm in. So try to relax the arm, that's the most important part. And the other arm in front, the shoulder stays back, down, pull the arm in and relax the arm. And that's both your shoulder and penetration training. And we're having 3.5 minutes. Now we're talking about the problems of the 1970s in the economy, but we are having a big task to do, and that is to learn great British inventions. So, great things which happened in Britain. For example, the television, John Logie Baird, 1920s developed, 1932 first successful broadcast, or first broadcast, and radar, Sir Robert Watson Watt, 1935 first successful test. Because the inventions are important, for example here, radar has to do with the war and the Turing machine, why Britain won the war, and why Britain also is an important, is a big empire. But we were told something else, which here made the commercial expansion and prosperity, which sustained in part Britain's boom, was the booming slave trade. Now the slave trade was when British ships were taking people from the west coast of Africa and brought them under horrible conditions to the Americas and the colonies, and south of where they lived and died under horrible conditions. So, and we should remember two things, and one of them is that in 1807 it became illegal to trade slaves, and that in 1833 slaves were emancipated, and that in Britain the television was developed and the radar. Many industries and services were affected by strikes, and this caused problems between the trade unions and the government. So let's go to the sentence again. So many industries and services were affected by strikes, and this caused problems between the trade unions and the government. Are they explaining us why it was striked? So striking is when the employees of the people working for a company are saying, we are not working tomorrow. No, they don't tell us why they did it. And this causes, of course, problems between the trade unions and the government. Who are the trade unions? And why are working with the government? People began to argue that the unions were too powerful and that their activities were harming UK. Now, it would be helpful if we would know what unions are. It's 56 pages. And we could have said it at the beginning of this section, that would be sufficient. People began to argue that the unions were too powerful and that their activities were harming the UK. I think the unions are the unions of the workers. There we had nothing. I think I just said that that was a part of what was done for workers. I didn't know the name, but that was what I meant. We are going into that in the next part. Now we're having just 30 seconds left. And in that we are starting with It's so long working with radar. Let's make the Turing machine, invented by Alan Turing. That's at least simple, and that was in the 1930s. So the Turing machine, Alan Turing, 1930s. But it was when it became really successful in deciphering the German codes in the 1940s. I thank you very much, and until next time.